Hi, this is Prime with Rabble Theory. The purpose of this video is to give you a quick walkthrough and introduction to using Rain 2.1 to create AI inside of Unity. If you're already a user of Rain, go to the Rain menu inside of your project and click on Check for Updates to make sure you have the latest version. If you're new to Rain, go to the Rabble Theory website at rabbletheory.com/rain/download and look for the big green button. When you click on that, you'll get the latest version of Rain as a Unity package that you can bring into your project. Once you've imported Rain, you should find a Rain folder inside of your project pane, and when you click in the menu area, you should also see the Rain menu. To get started in this scene, I'm going to rig up a character named Max. To do that, I'll click on Max's root object, then go to the Rain menu and click on Create AI. Once I've done that, we can see that Rain has added a game object called AI to Max. We can also see the Rain editor here in the Unity Inspector pane. The first field inside of that editor is called Body, and Body represents the game object that the AI will be controlling. I can also see a number of icons that represent the components of Rain. The first of those components is called Memory. Memory represents the variables that are accessible to the Rain behavior tree system and that you can access from code. The second icon represents the Mind. The Mind is responsible for generating all behavior inside of Rain. By default, you're rigged up with a basic mind, which gives you access to Rain's behavior tree system. The next component is called Motor. Motor is responsible for all movement inside of Rain. In this case, we're rigged up with a basic motor. We also have a character controller motor if we're using a character controller on our game object, and the preferred method is using Mechanim. With the Mechanim motor, we have access to either direct movement with Mechanim animations or to Mechanim root motion animation. Our next component is called the Animator. The Animator lets us create animation states inside of Rain, which can be accessed from the Rain behavior tree system to trigger animation. The next component is called the Navigator. The Navigator is responsible for all navigation and pathfinding of our AI throughout the scene. The next component is called Senses. Senses allow you to add sensors to your AI that can detect information in the scene, place that information inside of Rain memory, and make that information available to the behavior tree system or to custom code. The last component inside of Rain is for adding custom elements that you create yourself. Custom elements are custom code that integrate directly with the Rain AI system. From custom elements, you have access to all of the other components inside of Rain and to Rain memory. To get more information on how to use any of these components, look for the red question mark icon inside of the Rain editor. When you click on the question mark icon, that will take you to a relevant wiki page on the Rabble Theory website. On each wiki page, you'll find screenshots, usage information, and even code samples that will help you get started with Rain. Now that we have our character rigged, the next thing we'd like to do is get him to move around inside of the scene. Now that I've added a basic AI rig to my character, I want to get him moving around the scene. To start with, I'll add a navigation mesh to my scene. The purpose of a navigation mesh is to identify areas that the AI can walk and also the obstacles that it ought to avoid when moving. I'll go to the Rain menu and click on Create Navigation Mesh. I'll then take the navigation mesh and put it in the center of my scene and scale it to make sure it covers the entire walkable area. Now that I've got that set in place, I want to move the character into its own layer. Now I do that to make sure that when I generate the navigation mesh, it doesn't generate any holes in the mesh where the character is standing. On the navigation mesh itself, I'll go into included layers and I'll turn off that character layer. And I'll also turn off any other layers that don't represent walkable areas, like my UI layer. Once I've done that, I can check the other variables here, make sure they make sense. The slope in which the character can walk, its step-up height, how tall it is, and how wide an area it needs to have around an obstacle when it goes around it. Again, for information on any of these parameters or any others, make sure you go click on that red question mark icon and look at the wiki page for more information. Once I've got my navigation mesh set up, I'll just click on the Generate Navigation Mesh button, and we see it quickly generates a navigation mesh that includes holes in the places that I shouldn't be walking around these colliders. Now, in order to use a navigation mesh, I really don't need to do any more than that. The AI can automatically detect navigation meshes in the scene and use them as required. The next thing I'd like to do is to get my AI to patrol this big empty area inside of the scene. To do that, I'm going to add a waypoint route. A waypoint route represents a set of points the AI can move through from one to another. Inside of Rain, I'll go to the Rain menu and click on Create Waypoint Route. You can see I've got a new waypoint route object added to my scene, and here's the waypoint route editor. The easiest way to add waypoints is just to point the camera to the spot on the ground you'd like the waypoint to be and hit Control W. And as I continue to do that and move the camera to different points, Rain will automatically add a set of connected waypoints for me. And there I've got a set of waypoints that my AI can move through. The other type of waypoints I can create inside of Rain is something called a waypoint network. A waypoint network represents a set of points I'd like to move through whenever I'm pathfinding. A good example of that is a bridge over a river. While it's possible from the navigation mesh that the AI might be able to move through a river, it's not usually what I want. So often what I'll do is I'll create a waypoint network that shows that the AI ought to move directly across the bridge rather than going underneath it and through the river. I'll create a waypoint network on this side of the map here, but I'll do it in the same way that I did for the waypoint route. I've created Rain, Create Waypoint Network. You can see a waypoint network here in my scene. And now as I hit Control W, I'll just add a set of points that represent the ways in which I'd like my AI to walk whenever it's moving. Now, just because the points are connected doesn't mean that the AI actually has to walk directly through objects. For example, you can see that these waypoints are connected directly through this object here. When the AI moves, it'll actually follow the navigation mesh. So you can think of the lines between these objects just representing the connectivity of the points, that the AI will move from one point to another, but not necessarily the path it will take when it does so. It will actually path around this object when it moves. So I'll just place a few more waypoints in here. You can also see I can take points that are already part of my network, such as this point here and this point over here, and I can click on Connect to connect them together. And I can also remove connections that I don't really like. For example, this connection. Over here, I can click on Disconnect to get rid of it. Okay, so now I have a waypoint route, and I'll rename that to Patrol Route. And I have a waypoint network, which I'll call Patrol Network. Okay, so far I've rigged up my character with a basic AI. I've created a navigation mesh for movement. I've created a patrol route that represents a route I'd like to patrol. And I've created a patrol network, which represents when I'm moving to areas on this side of the screen, how I'd like the AI to move along that network. The last thing I'm going to show is putting navigation targets in the scene. Navigation targets represent specific places that I can name inside of the scene that I'd like to move to. So I can go to Rain, Create Navigation Target. These points look a lot like the waypoints, but they're not connected together. They're mainly just individual points that I can mark and that I can give names to. Like I can call this first one Location 1, and I can call the second one Location 2. And then for my behavior tree, I can tell my AI whether I'd like him to move to Location 1 or Location 2, and do so just by naming those points. So there's the scene I've got set up. The next thing I'd like to do is give my AI some behavior so we can actually do these actions, patrolling and moving from point to point inside of this scene. In order to add behavior to my AI, I'll go back to the AI object that was created on Max before, and I'll click on the Mind component. You can see that there's a behavior tree asset field here. A behavior tree asset is a set of behaviors I've created using the Rain behavior tree editor. To open the editor, I'll either click on Open Behavior Editor here in the inspector, or I'll go to the Rain menu and click on Behavior Tree Editor. Once the editor is open, I can either create a new behavior tree, or I can select from behavior trees that have already got created. And let me show you one of those now. This is a simple patrol behavior we created, and there's two types of nodes in here. There are logic nodes like the sequencer, a parallel, and this waypoint node, and there are also action nodes like this animation node, movement node, and this timer node. If you'd like to add a new node to a behavior tree, simply right-click and go to Create. There you'll see the different types of action nodes that we have, including things like animation, playing audio, detecting with sensors, adding custom code, and more here. and also logic nodes represented by decisions. For information on all of these, make sure you go out to the RAIN website and go to our wiki. Again, you can click on one of these red question mark icons to go there directly and get more information about any of our behavior tree nodes. In order to assign a behavior tree to my AI that I've already created, I'll open up in the project pane here the AI folder, and I should see a behavior tree folder inside of that. I can take any of the behavior trees I've already got created and drag them over onto the behavior tree asset. Once I've done that, the next time the AI runs, it'll run the behavior tree represented by the asset here. So there's one more thing we need to take care of, and that's to make sure that we have our animator set up to play the animations that are associated with AI movement. So I'll click on the animator here, go into Add Animation State, and I'm going to add two states here, one for idle and one for walk. Now these are the two animation states associated with our behavior tree. Let's go take a look at that quickly. Now here in my behavior tree I can see that for my movement I'm using an animation, walk, which is one of the two we just set up whenever I'm moving. And then when I pause and I stop moving, I'm using the animation idle. Let's click back on our animator again. And I want to make sure these are set up to wrap for looping because they're used associated with idling and with movement. I don't want those just to play once and stop. I want those to keep looping. Okay, so we've got an animator set up now that'll play back animations from our behavior tree as we're doing movement and as we're idling. The final topic I'm going to cover is how to mark up information in our scene that can be detected by RAIN sensors. I'll start by selecting this wall in the center of the scene. I'll go to the RAIN menu and click on Create Entity. When I've done that, I can see an entity object has been added to my game object. Here in the inspector, I can see there's a form field. Form represents the game object that's being described by this entity. I can also add an aspect to that. In this case, I'm going to add a visual aspect, which is information that can be detected by a visual sensor. I'll give that a simple aspect name like wall. So whenever I'm looking for a wall in this scene, I should be able to find this object. Now I can go over to my AI. I'll click on the Sensors field, and I'll go to Add Sensor. I'm going to add a visual sensor to make sure I can detect the visual aspect I just added. And there we go. I'll point out one other quick feature here, which is, by default, the RAIN Inspector is set in basic mode, meaning that we don't see all of the different options available. If you click on the gear icon, you can switch to advanced settings, which gives you a few more options. In this case, I want to increase the range of my sensor to cover more area. So we'll just drag on that and make the sensor just a bit bigger to make sure it can cover most of the level. Okay, and there we go. So now what I'd like to do is go ahead and disable the pieces I've been working with here, just in case I made a small mistake while we've been working. And I'm going to disable those, and I'll switch over to the pre-built setup that I've already made and tested here. And it's got the same things. It's got an AI rigged up with a sensor. It's got a patrol route and a waypoint network and a couple of navigation targets that we've set up in the scene. It's using exactly the same behavior tree that we have set up before. This entire project should be available to you for downloading from our RAIN website, so you should be able to follow along with the tutorial and see the final scene that we've created. So with this setup, I'm going to go ahead and hit play, and we'll see that our AI character begins moving around. Now if I'd like to debug or see more information about what's happening in real time, I can open up the RAIN Behavior Tree Editor, and as long as I have my AI selected in the scene, I should get a good sense of what's happening inside of the behavior tree. So that's a nice way to do some debugging and to play around with RAIN a bit more. So hopefully that's been a helpful tutorial. If you want more information, go to rivaltheory.com and check out our community portal. We have forums there where we can get more information about RAIN and ask questions. You can also reach us at support@rivaltheory.com through email, and we try to respond as quickly as we can.